Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Catherine Grill, the CEO of Neolth, and we are back today for another Neolth Ask the Experts live stream event. I am here with Dr. Claire Wheeler to talk about the topic that you all voted for, which is managing holiday stress. So before we jump in, I'd love to just invite Dr. Wheeler to introduce herself and say hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Claire Wheeler. I'm a physician and clinical psychologist and the Chief Medical Officer at Neolth, and I'm really happy to be here talking about holiday stress.
Thanks so much, Dr. Wheeler, for being here. It is coming up on Thanksgiving, so we just went through daylight savings, depending on where you live in the country, and it's starting to get a little bit colder, it's starting to get darker, and then the holidays are also coming up. So a lot of you have been asking questions around how do you manage holiday stress, which is a topic we'll probably be talking about for the next couple of months. But yeah, curious to hear from you, Dr. Wheeler. There's a lot of different factors that can make this time of the year stressful. Could you maybe walk us through some of the stressors that we face during the holiday season?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And of course, some of these stressors are universal. That is, they're experienced by pretty much everyone. And some of them are unique to young adults and teenagers. So I'll start with the universal ones. First of all, we are just exposed to a barrage of marketing and advertising and pressure to spend money and do better and cook more and just perform at this superhuman level and at a superhuman speed for about 2 whole months, because the hype really begins in early November and it kind of doesn't let up until after New Year's. And of course, there are traditions and social norms and things that we feel pressure to follow, and some of them we want to follow. But I think one of the first things to think about at the beginning of every holiday season, and this year in particular, after 2 years of a pandemic and all the other things that are going on, to just think about what are the parts of the holiday season that actually do feel good to you, that have less stress involved, that feel natural, like this is something I really want to do. And that it's really just an inventory. Here's what my family does for Thanksgiving. Here's what we do between the two holidays. Here's what we do for the winter holidays, and just really what appeals to you. And another thing that is helpful is to step back and ask yourself what these holidays really mean to you and your family. There's a lot of controversy around Thanksgiving, of course, right? Because it represents the abuse and warfare against Native Americans, and a feast to celebrate a first year for colonizers. So there are upsides and downsides to the traditions of Thanksgiving in the United States. But that doesn't mean that you can't celebrate and give thanks and have gratitude for the year behind you. Thanksgiving can be thought of as a harvest festival, and that's common in many, many ancient societies and modern societies as well. Christmas can also be problematic based on a person's spiritual or religious leanings, and then those of the family and the people that you gather with. So these are some of the universal concerns, some of the social norms and traditions that we have and habits that we have around these holidays, some of the origins of these holidays and what they mean. And you can modernize and bring that up to date and make it work for you. And then there's also the expectations that come from everyone around us, and also the merchants and the stores and the corporations who want us to just spend as much money as possible.
Thank you. I think that was so important to mention. And one of the reasons I love Gen Z is because they're really conscious about everything that they do in their lives, and even thinking about these holidays that we've been celebrating for years, and thinking about, what is the origin of them? What is the meaning of them? How do I make sure that, I'm celebrating this in a meaningful way that's respectful to not just myself and my family, but other cultures as well. So thanks for bringing that up. And you brought up something else that was really stuck with me, but it was this pressure almost to perform is the word that you used. Like, I have to perform. Everything needs to be perfect for the holidays. Before we talk and kind of jump into tactics on how to manage stress, I'm wondering if we could dive a little bit deeper into that. Like, what does it mean around performing and that pressure to be perfect? And you mentioned the finances as well, probably spending a lot of money trying to look a certain way, buy presents, all these certain things. Can you just talk about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. And this is another thing that I love about Gen Z. I have one Gen Z kid and two that are a little older. And another thing is concern about the climate and concern about the environment. And another way that you can make the holidays special and start to bring your own personal touch and your own brand, so to speak, to your family and friends and your community around the holidays is think about not buying new things, or think about DIY projects, or think about making things and framing that around the core values that you carry. Because there's one thing about winter and the quiet season and the solstice and going deeply, and that's really looking at yourself and your life and thinking about what really matters to you. And so, there's a lot of basic tips like create a budget, decide how much money you're going to spend, be careful about where you shop, be careful of scams. I tend to, back in the day before the pandemic, when I traveled a lot, whenever I traveled, that's when I would do my Christmas shopping, just to find unique things that are for people that I care about, that means I thought about them and not that I just felt pressure to go out and spend money. Other things that we feel pressure to do are to cook a whole bunch of very often what we call palatable or comfort foods. And these are foods that are high in fat and sugar and salt in particular. And they are known to give you a short-term relief to stress because they elevate serotonin and other foods and other chemicals in your brain that make you feel better. And so it's, if you ever took a step back and said, why do we bake all these cookies and make all these pies and eat throughout the winter? Well, in the old days and most of human history, that was the time when there was plenty to eat. So you ate because there were no refrigerators or freezers or anything. But now we don't have to do that. We don't have to gorge. We don't have to feast. Another thing that a lot of younger people are more concerned about maybe than we older people is animal welfare. And so this is another way that you can make the holidays your own by thinking about the animals that we eat and that we that are participating in our holiday celebrations. And then of course there's the whole issue of eating around the holidays and saying yes or no to certain foods that are being offered to you and bombarded, left on your doorstep. And that's a topic also that I think one should be particularly mindful of.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard a lot from young people around, I think just all year, right? Stress around, body image, especially with social media and having, difficult relationships with food. I know we have a couple different video series on Neolth that address that from Margaret, Monique, and even some, I think, from Jacob that are coming out in the next month, which I've watched and I've found really helpful. But yeah, maybe we should talk about that a little bit more. Like if somebody is struggling with not just holiday stress, but specifically stress around food and the holidays, is there any advice that you would give them or any tactics that they can use to try to manage that food related stress?
Absolutely. I think they really do kind of these food issues can come to a head and at this time of year because the dark and the cold stimulates your appetite too. So people's eating patterns do tend to change as the seasons change. And so you may notice a change in your appetite. You may be a little more stressed and noticing you crave more sugar, more fat, like more ice cream and pizza type foods rather than the foods maybe that you normally eat. But the biggest pressure very often comes from outside, from other people. How do you politely say no to foods that are really not good for you? I personally, I follow a diet that works for me. I don't like having to explain it all the time to other people. And so that's one thing, is to try to think about what are you going to say when people ask you why you're eating this or not eating that. And my suggestion is to keep it very simple and maintain your boundaries. Boundaries are super important when you have any kind of mental health issue, or actually in life in general, but in particular around eating issues with people pushing food on you or trying to undermine, even consciously or unconsciously, people will often sabotage or undermine your efforts to take good care of yourself, because very often it reflects back on them that they aren't taking such good care of themselves. We see this also around the mask issue as well. So what I would suggest is come up with a couple of one-liners that simply put the conversation to rest. Like, I'm just going to continue doing what I always do through the holiday season because I want to greet the new year feeling good. Something really simple like that. You can normalize it. You can minimize it without being defensive. And that's another thing. You kind of start to feel, I think, after a few weeks of exposure to all this holiday craziness, a bit defensive. And so it's important to take time for yourself to let those defenses down and relax in moments when you don't have to be hyper vigilant, so that you have reserve and you have the energy and you have had the chance to process and center yourself before entering into this dinner party where it's going to be constant scrutiny. And so, and another thing that the attitude or posture to adopt is, we all have our own ways of eating, and this is how I eat. And then maybe ask a question about something completely unrelated, like, how's that soccer league going? Or what are your thoughts about, do you have any New Year's resolutions or something? So this is a trick I do all the time when someone asks me about something I don't want to talk about. I give them a vague sort of non-response, and then I change the subject with a quick follow-up question without that gap in between for someone to give me more. And this is a really helpful trick, and I suggest that you try it next time someone pressures you to eat in a way that's different from the way that is good for you.
Wow, a lot of tricks and tips there. I like the idea of coming up with a one-liner, like for me, even saying something like, I have some dietary restrictions or food allergies. I think that might be a good thing people could say. And then changing the subject too. It feels like a really a good way to kind of divert the attention there. So for just kind of moving back to generalized stress, not just stress around food, any other tricks or tips that you would give our audience for how they can manage some of that stress that they're feeling around the holidays?
Absolutely. Another thing that people often dread about the holidays is spending time with people you don't see most of the year, who you kind of have to because they're family. And you may even be looking forward to it, but just know that you might be in some cringy or difficult conversations. And this is where, again, it's important to have islands of time where you are on your own and you're really thinking ahead in a calm state, in an empowered state to the situation that looms on the horizon, like Thanksgiving dinner with those aunts and uncles. And to just kind of remember that you came to your opinions and your values and your beliefs on your own, and that you're entitled to them and they are valid. But that doesn't mean that everyone needs to know what they are. And it also doesn't mean that in a social holiday occasion that you necessarily have to stick up for them, unless someone is being, truly abusive or harmful or rude or disparaging to others. Obviously, you call that out, right? But it's also helpful, again, to not necessarily have that defensive posture and to not have an offensive posture, but to just know that there's this person I'm going to be around who offends me frequently. And now it's up to you to decide how you deal with being offended and whether or not you really want to go all the way to being offended at all. Maybe you can start to shift your reactions to different people in your life, not for their sake and not even necessarily to make everything easier for everyone around you, but to protect yourself, protect your heart rate, protect your nervous system by being able to just see someone being that way and don't attach to it and don't let that. And, we talk about this in a more woo-woo way, kind of infect your energy field, but really moods are contagious. Aggression, racism, apathy, all of these things that might be coming from the people around you, that doesn't have to infect you. It's not like a virus that you're going to inhale. You just have to keep breathing. You hold your seat. You're confident and you're comfortable in your own beliefs and your own opinions. You can keep them to yourself. No one can force you to share them, and you can politely decline to engage. And again, that's another thing that I recommend. And don't forget, changing the subject is always a helpful technique as well.
So much to dig into there that we'll probably have to continue with next month, especially around some of the struggles with food and setting boundaries with families. But I just want to recap real quick as we're summing up the end of this live stream. So just thinking about that, we talked about the pressure to perform, and that's something, again, really stuck with me. I think with social media and other things, we all feel like there's this pressure to have this perfect holiday season, and it's exhausting. So maybe being able to, you mentioned, pick and choose the different things that you want to engage with during the holiday season, the things that bring you the most joy, the things that bring you the most fun, and trying to cross some things off your list, decide not to participate in the things that are the most stressful for you. Other things that we thought about were kind of the ethos and ethics. We talked about a little bit. There's a lot more to dig into, but kind of cultural the background or origins of holidays and what you do and don't want to participate in, and even thinking about it from kind of an eco-conscious way. How you can participate in the holiday in a way that's good for the environment, good for animals, or whether it's through, like you mentioned, some of those techniques and tactics to deflect the conversation or change the conversation and not have to talk about things that you don't want to talk about. So I learned so much. I'm excited to continue the conversation next month. But before we end, Dr. Wheeler, anything else that you want to say as far as kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would just remind your kindness, your compassion, your talent. All of these things are beautiful gifts. And maybe that's a really great thing to focus on rather than all the other stuff during Thanksgiving season.
I love that. Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Finding ways to really feel empowered during the holiday season is a great way to start to manage some of the stress that we might be feeling. So I'm Dr. Catherine Grill. I was here with Dr. Wheeler, and we were talking about holiday stress as part of our Neolth Ask the Experts live stream event. As a reminder, you can vote for the topic of these live streams anonymously in the Neolth app. Just participate in the community polls each month. We'll be back next month in December, maybe talking about more holiday stress issues. We'll see whatever you vote for, but thanks for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Bye, everyone.